Ok, pueden empezar.
Hi, everyone. We'd like to welcome all of you for our panel today. So today, this is a discussion with these incredible scholars from Universidade Federal Fluminense, and we're going to be discussing the topic of sound in the Global South. And so I would like to introduce the scholars who are going to be here, and what are the themes that they're going to discuss. So first, we're going to have Dr. Professor Felipe Trota, and he's going to present his paper. It's called The Issue of Silence in the Workplace. Felipe Trota is a musicologist, professor of the Department of Media and Cultural Studies and of the graduate program in communications at UFI. He's the author of dozens of articles and book chapters. Recently, he launched his last book, Annoying Music in Everyday Life. And, well, then we're going to have Rafael Zicconi, who is going to present the paper Aesthetics of Abundance in Precarious Time, Neoliberalism, Agribusiness and Brazilian Popular Music. Rafael is a postdoctoral researcher at the graduate program in communication of the Fluminense Federal University. He has a scholarship for FAPESG, excellence scholarship. He's had his PhD in communication from the PUC, University of Rio de Janeiro, the Catholic University of Rio de Janeiro. He has a bachelor's degree in economics and master's degree in media and everyday life from Fluminense Federal University. He's also a researcher and a member of the research group MUSILAB from UFI and Grecos from UFI. And his research focuses on the political economy of culture, sound, and music studies, and the intersections between economy, politics, and music aesthetics. And last, we're going to have Victor Henrique Guimarães, and his paper is...
Travou?
Hola, Roberto.
Roberto travou.
Vendors and Urban Culture in Rio de Janeiro. He was a doctoral student in communication with an ongoing investigation about music and politics in Afro-American diaspora, co-curator of the exposition Real Possible Futures that inaugurated Escola do Absurdo in 2024. He's creator and professor of musical Afro-Betization, a mini course about Black music ministered between May and June of this year. So we'll pass the word to each of them in order. They'll have about 15 to 20 minutes to present the papers. And in the end, we are open to questions from the public. Okay, so I'll pass now the word for Felipe.
Thanks, Roberto. Thanks for Rafael and Victor for the inversion. I was not supposed to talk firstly, but I asked to do that because I'm not at home, so we have a bit of confusion here. So it'll be now to get this calm environment that I'm into now. So thank you for the introduction. I'm going to present a paper related to the research I'm doing, an ongoing research about sound and music at workplace. And it's important now to register the collaboration of 3 students who have been working with me in this research. Évila Dantas, who is working with me for almost 3 years, undergraduate studies students, all of them. Ives Lara Pereira and Gabriela de Sá. We presented a version of this paper at CIPS, Conference of Sound and Sonorities, which took place in June or July, I don't know exactly, here in Vitória City, nearby Rio de Janeiro. So the issue, in the research so far, we finished around 40 interviews with workers from different occupations and also different salary range. And the issue of silence appears sometimes in this talk. So these papers will focus on this topic, trying to understand the comes in the conversations about the sound environment of the workplace. First of all, a question that we talked about a lot. Okay. A question that we talked a lot during the interviews and after the interviews among the team was what they refer to when they talk about silence. In other words, what is silence? As Ana Maria Shoa-Gautier summarizes, silence has a polysemy that encompasses several different ideas. Ideas positively evaluated as contemplation and quietness, but also ideas related to sort of dark side of it, like dimensions of fear, angst, terror, which is felt like when we use the term silence. The category silence also includes artistic and political use of power against people, against groups, with the idea of silencing. So it's too much. Several ideas are crossed around the term silence. Of course, all the bibliography pointed to that. Silence cannot be taken simply as absence of sound. Several works and debates have pointed that this doesn't exist. It's impossible to have total absence of sound. Hence, here it comes to an interpretation that can be worth. Silence is a sonic phenomenon that's not definable in itself, but it occurs and is referred to in relation to another sonic event that is defined and perceived as sound. So there is this opposition, but this opposition is operated by an interpretation of the phenomenon, of sonic phenomenon. What is sound? Sound is vibration. Sound is the movement of the air that resounds the body. And body here not only means the living body, people and other living things, but also body in physical terms, any object that would react to sound waves and vibe accordingly when this vibration comes to it. In this sense, it's interesting to think about silence and as sound and science, taking another physical concept, density. The idea of sound density in music refers to the amount of sound that is perceived simultaneously. In other words, how occupied the sound space is with different sound waves. This might be useful to understand what is referred to when people talk about science. Silence is a term that is used to describe a less dense sound environment. Less dense related to what? Related to another sound density that is perceived as sounded or noisy. One of our interviews, now I think this argument makes it's more clear. One of our interviews works as dressmaker, and her workplace is fulfilled of several sounds. There is this sewing machines. There are 4 machines that she works at home, but there's a specific room for his job. And there is the sewing machines, plus the noise that comes from street. There is a window that goes to a very busy street, and the sound of the street comes inside the room. Despite all these sounds, she states that sometimes she feels a need to turn on the radio to stop the silence. This management of sound and silence for her resonated what Vinicius Pereira defines as soundless. It's difficult to translate because the term was coined in Portuguese, but it's a term that condenses sound and silence. He called soundless. My translator, I don't know how he would translate this. The soundless has a function to block unwanted sounds, and we could add unwanted silence, but to block this with another sound. In other words, the use of sound to adjust the sound density through this manipulation, through the control, in order to control the resulting sound ambience. In this way, the category sound and silence are defined from listening, which always shapes the possible actions, possible intervention that people, in our case, workers, can make in this dynamic. Of course, this is possible when workers can have some control over the sound environment. In a study using a questionnaire distributed to 257 workers about the use of music in corporate office, Anneli Hake identified that the control over the sound environment through the voluntary activation of music implied for some works a kind of resource to escape the concentration imposed by work. They say that they put music to go elsewhere, to think about other things other than the activity they were doing from work. However, in many other cases, music was used to increase concentration to do the work and also to give ideas, some people working in creativity jobs. Hence, here comes another concept which is constantly put on table when we talk about music, sound, and work, which is productivity. Productivity may be improved by sound management, which frequently is referred to as the idea of silence. I mean, silence is taken as something that may improve the productivity at work. It was very interesting. We were discussing and preparing this paper, and last week, a colleague of mine here from MOVE posted on social media a kind of complaint about the loud music played by her neighborhood, who, while she was trying to finish an academic article. So some works requires concentration, intellectual work mostly, and usually demands this kind of work demand a less dense sound environment. Writing an academic article usually will require a certain silence, or at least to have control of the sound ambience. And she was complaining social media about this, about the music. But this is true. But this is true also for some professionals from different areas. Many point to idea that silence is something desirable. It's a kind of acoustic condition capable of generating well-being or even calm. We talk, for instance, with an employee at a public store in a very busy street, and he describes the noise of this workplace, which condenses the street and also music, as something that distracts him. That there's this mixture, he gives details about it, a mixture of a music repertoire that he doesn't like and he doesn't control, and the sounds of the street that produce all this atmosphere that impacts his work, impacts his mood. And he adds, unfortunately, there's no way to ask the street for silence. Similarly, a high school teacher reported that she takes refuge in the teachers' rooms at her school during the breaks, the class breaks, and he goes there in search of silence, like to heal from the noisy ambience of the room, the classroom. Usually, silence is positive and evaluated and even desired, but not always. One of our interviews who works in a home offices, she has is a manager of a company. I don't know exactly, don't recall here exactly what she does, but she works in home office and requires concentration. And she said she likes silence, but not too much, otherwise she gets crazy. So silence at work also can be referred to as something frightening, as something that work, even for those workers that require concentration, creativity, sometimes avoid. Well, here comes another thing that may be interesting to say something is about the idea of the normal ambience of the environment. Ask it about how he felt the sound environment of his workplace. One of our interviews, which works as a manager in a drugstore, replied briefly and very precisely. He says, it's normal. It's a normal environment. The simplicity of this answer reveals an intriguing universe of interpretation about how the subjective perception of sound density in the workplace is conditioned also by learned acoustic expectation. The idea of normality condenses accumulated knowledge about the sound characteristics of each space, as well as the expected and the acceptable sound range in each environment. Each work environment and each ambience at all sounds in a way, and this way are tacitly recognized as normal. And therefore, this normality is adequate for the functioning of the job in that place. Workers in each location establish acoustic behavior, which are agreements also based on conventions, instituting norms of conduct that shape their interaction with each other and with the space. Some of these conventions may be formalized in regulations, but the most important usually are implied conventions. That is, those that are built and constructed and reaffirmed in the daily exchange in each professional work. Let's return to the drugstore now. When the worker refers to a normal environment, this includes the sound of music which play there, and together with the music, it comes from the speakers a kind of constant advertisement of the label of the drugstore, plus interactions between customers and attendants, plus conversations between people that enter and leave the space. And he also highlights the noise of the telephone, which is the device from which they receive delivery orders. So this relatively loud sound is part of the dynamics of the work itself. And an important element of this noisy normality is that the employees of this drugstore receive commission on sales. In this sense, the noisy movement, is desirable. Conversely, silence in the establishment is associated with the absence of flows and means loss in their income, being classified and felt as something undesirable. This case draws our attention to the fact that the feeling of normality in the work in sound environment of the work is intertwined with the dynamic of sound expectation, which in turn are also conditioned by several elements that are not exactly part of the acoustic universe, but which determine how the effectiveness of the work and remuneration, in his case, will be perceived. What we want to highlight is that perception of silence in the workplace are evaluations that are not simply limited to getting used to the presence or absence of sound or silence, or more or less sound density in the ambience. It constitutes the constructions of an auditory symbolism, where each noise, each frequency, each pause has a meaning. Thus, in many cases, the presence of silence can be more alarming than a loud noise, as it would mean in this case failure, disruption of the product. In every situation, the presence of something defined as silence is meaningful and affects the dynamic of the label. the mood of the people, and the way people sense the passage of time, the subjective feeling of the time at work, which you also know is something very important about being at work, being in power relations within the work. But this topic for another paper, not today. I'll stop here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Felipe, for your very interesting talk on silence in the workplace. And so now I pass the microphone to Rafael Zinconi. Just remind me the questions will be asked in the end of the three panelists' talks.
Okay, I'm gonna find here my presentation. Okay, can you see it? Yes?
Yes.
I can't see it.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay.
Can you try
But-
pass for the next page so we see if it's working?
Okay. It's okay?
Yes.
If I
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. Just so I can't see my presentation, so
Rafael, desculpa, tá cortando aqui para mim a apresentação.
Tá? E assim?
Agora
Assim tá ok ou não?
Tá bom, agora tá ok.
Sim,
Agora tá
melhor.
Tá ok. Hello. Firstly, I would like to present myself. Hello, everyone. My name is Rafael Zinconi. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the Federal Fluminense University in the graduate program in communication. In my research project, I investigate commercially successful music in Brazil and its relations with politics and the Brazilian economy. In this presentation today, I will discuss some connections between Brazilian sertanejo music, our country's most popular genre, and agribusiness, which is one of the main productive forces in Brazil today. Okay. Firstly, I would like to talk a little bit of the background of this research. So I'm in the first year of this research project, and my research interest is the relation between contemporary sertanejo music, the music industry, and agribusiness in Brazil. So, first, I examined the economic relationship between the agribusiness sector and this growing music industry, and how they reinforce and feed each other. So, I'm studying this agroplay hits that I gonna talk more about to you, and the agribusiness economy and the partnership between them. So secondly, I presented and work that talk about political controversies around sertanejo singers. So the majority of them are right wing or conservative. They support right wing politicians. So this kind of political controversies, it happens a lot with Brazilian singers in platforms such as X, the former Twitter, okay, and another social media. And the final point is that is the musical audiovisuals with in singers' music videos. So the analyze of the aesthetics in lyrics, music lyrics, and also audiovisual lyrics. So to start, I'm talk about what is agronejo. Okay, it's a recent subgenre inside sertanejo, Brazilian sertanejo. Agronejo is a recent branch of sertanejo music. It mixes traditional hero signs, the so-called modão, with urban beats and pop sonorities. Its lyrics celebrate the success and prosperity of agribusiness, building a cultural ethos that says, being from the countryside is cool, it's modern, it's profitable. The message that rural youth are wealthy, confident, and proud, not backward or provincial. This discourse redefines the image of the interior as a space of modernity and power. Okay, uh, and one of the artists that's very popular nowadays in Brazil, if we see in Spotify charts, YouTube charts, is this woman, this girl that's called Ana Castela. She's more famous than the other singers of Agroplay hits. Okay, um, so uh, what's my question here? The central question of this research is what parallels can be drawn between the Agronesia movement and Brazil's agribusiness economy? My first hypothesis is that the music industry benefits from the economic strength of agribusiness, which in turn enjoys tax exemptions and public support for the Brazilian state, okay, for a long time. The second hypothesis that I thought is that cultural policies for music in Brazil are historically fragile, especially for independent or alternative artists with live sertanejo backed by private capital in a privileged position. Okay, if you think a little bit about that, in the last years, for example, there were a lot of news that points out um, Brazilian singers like Ana Castela, for example, that uh, makes makes concerts in the countryside in benefit with uh, public money, okay, in an irregular way. So here, I think that's very important to bring a little historic context, okay, of the Brazilian development model. So the prominence of agribusiness in Brazil results from economic policy since the 90s, after the stabilization plans that ended hyperinflation. These reforms produced the process of deindustrialization, while agriculture and financial sector like Faria Lima, that the Brazilians are very familiar with this term, sector became dominant. Regardless of whether governments were left or right wing, here we can be a lot of pictures since Fernando Henrique Cardoso, that were a liberal president between passing okay and the transition to Lula, left wing, center left wing, Dilma Rousseff, that were the for the semi Lula's party, Workers' Party in Brazil. Here, the transition between Michel Temer, liberal and right liberal, to Jair Bolsonaro, extreme right. Okay, and then the return of Lula. So, what we would like to say that agribusiness politics are very central in all of these governments. Um, Agribusiness maintained economic hegemony and strong political representation in Congress, which tends to be conservative. The slogan that's very popular in Brazil, Brazil television, the marketing propaganda is agro is pop, agro is everything. Okay, it's very famous and it's strongly present in the lyrics of the singers that I'm gonna show. Perfect captures, né? This slogan perfect captures this ideological consensus. So here I make a little in parallel. If we return to this to the dictatorship, right-wing dictatorship, Brazilian between 1964 and 1985, that this relationship between country music, sertanejo as a brand of music, and the right wing in the politics. Okay, this connection between certain Asian music and conservative political forces is not new. During Brazil's right-wing military dictatorship, several sertanejo singers supported the regime's nationalist propaganda. On that time, this propaganda is called the most famous longest was Brasil, in Portuguese, Brasil, ame-o ou deixe-o. Brazil, you must love this country or you go away, something like that. Their songs celebrated the homeland, the countryside, and progress, promoting a patriotic and developmentalist ideal that resonates again today, but now under new cultural forms. So now I would like to talk about agroplay hits. A good example of this new phase is Agroplay Music, a company founded in 2021 that manages many of today's top sertanejo artists. Agroplay represents a shift from, it's an example, okay, of a shift from urban centers like Rio and São Paulo to the rural south of Brazil, mirroring the economic relocation of power. If you think about the interest music in cities like Goiânia, in the capital cities of the states of Mato Grosso, for example, okay? If you think about the example of agroplay hits, it combines digital strategies with hero imaginary, like tractors, cows, and soy fields to produce a modern vision of the countryside. This aesthetics embodies a new nationalist pride, often showing symbols such as the Brazilian flag, luxury pickups, and numbers that praise the agro economy. So now I'm going to show some examples that we can find elements of this kind of agro ideology in music. Some examples. So here I put the music Agro by the singers, Leo and Rafael. One of these two singers is the owner of Agroplay Hits, for example. It's one of the owners. So here I put a translation from the Portuguese. Okay, so he says, Agri-stop, agri-chic, agri-screw, agri-this. If you are a fan of barbecue and country songs, you'd better get used to us. There must be plenty of alcohol, people looking to get drunk. Blow up those loudspeakers. The sound system here comes straight from the source. We've got a barbecue plantation. Want fish? We'll cut it in the lake. So a lot of these a kind of agribusiness ethos that lives in the countryside is very good, very rich, and a lot of, if you see this kind of video clips, not just this one, we can see a lot of sentence that gives apologetical numbers from the agribusiness economy, like in Portuguese. A agropecuária foi responsável por 74,5 mil novos empregos no Brasil. That agribusiness economy is responsible for a lot of jobs, of new jobs in Brazil. Okay, it's one of these examples. Another example is the music Os Meninos da Pecuária from the same singers. That one part of the lyrics that I give focus here is from end to end, Brazil's got cowboys keeping things moving. It's no wonder GDP starts with P for pecuária. I don't own an important car, but my pickup truck is brand new and covered in mud. I count the value of my cattle. How many Ferraris are there in this pasture? Okay, so they are saying they are talking about the value of the cows in their pasture. So there, in this kind of video clip, you can say other kind of sentence like o Brasil possui o maior rebanho bovino do mundo. Apologetical sentence that reinforce the agribusiness economy. And to the last one is Inoagro. I think it's more apologetical than the other ones because in parallel with the images that reinforce symbols of agricultural economy, it's in this video clip, it appears a lot of the colors of Brazilian flag that in the last years is, for us Brazilians, is associated with the right wing or extreme right, symbolized by Jair Bolsonaro. So the former extreme right president of Brazil. So there are some extracts of this music, so I can read a little bit. I'm a cowgirl, pure blood. It's Ana Castelli singing this music. I'm a cowgirl, pure blood. I'm from the countryside. Yellow is soil, yellow of Brazilian flag. Green is pasture. Blue blesses the white of the cattle's heads. I'm from the countryside. I'm a cowboy. So here, just a few analytic comments. Across these songs, the Agronation repertoire builds an ideology of proud prosperity and belonging linked to agribusiness. The lyrics celebrate rural identity as modern and powerful, blending symbols of work, pleasure, and wealth. They reframe the countryside as a site of national pride and economic strength, where tractors replaced luxury cars and the landscape of production became a landscape of prestige. This fusion of agro-values, leisure, and consumer aesthetics transforms the rural world into desirable lifestyles with Brazilian popular culture. Behind the agro-narrative, despite their celebratory tone, these songs convey an apologetic theology that idealizes agribusiness while concealing its contradictions. In reality, Brazilians' agro-industrial complex prioritizes grain exportation over domestic food supply, depends on intensive land use and environmental degradation, and exerts strong political and media influence through lobbying and image campaigns. The music discourse thus functions as cultural legitimation, translation economy, and ecological inequality into an attractive narrative of national pride and prosperity. So here is my contribution, and here you can see some of the reference that I used to construct this paper. Okay, I think it's all. Thank you. Okay.
Okay. Rafael. Thank you, Rafael. So with no longer delay, let's hear Victor Henrique Guimarães.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, and we can also
Uh,
see your slide.
You can see my slide. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll put in full screen to better visualize the things. Nice to meet you. I'm Vitor. I hope this presentation will get some feel to think about some ways of how we can think body and music engaging on each other to elaborate another way to see and to understand and to perceive um, both music itself and political engagements and through music. I'm from PPG-Com, the postgraduate program of communication in UF. I'm also from Musilab, like my colleagues Rafael and Felipe. Here I elaborate a kind of more theoretical and methodological proposal. But I think I hope it will not get too complicated. One thing that might transform this presentation a bit complicated is because there's some kind of construction around here, and the driller is on high enough, and maybe there's some distractions. So I must say this presentation, this work is a part of my research that I initiated earlier this year, called Polyphonics and Entanglements of Afro-Diasporic Music. And I begin it thinking 5 principles, what I'm calling aesthetic and civilizer principles of Black art in America. I'm researching specifically music, but I cannot say that I got to these words, I got to these principles only by music. It was broader research. These are the principles are ancestrality, thinking the constant pulses of knowledges, Black knowledges through space and time; orality, thinking voice as an agent of inscription of these ancestral knowledges; corporeality, thinking body as an agent of inscription of these ancestral knowledges; circularity or spirality, thinking the circulation of vital energy, axé, the circular motion of dances, the interactions, the movement as a suggestion of Black aesthetics. And sociability, at last, thinking the ultimate political use of all those principles. And this is what I'm seeing now. I begin to see some things meshing into each other, mixing into each other, and I'm thinking about it yet. But the most important here today is that I'm going to talk about corporate reality in this work, and there's no intention to essentialize or exclusivize these principles. I'm not saying that any of them is exclusively Black. We can see all of them around in other musical expressions all around the world. And I'm not trying to say, oh, this is what make Black music. I'm trying to understand, to elaborate some kind of structure, methodological structure, to better comprehend what I'm hearing, what I'm seeing, and the flows that I see in the diasporic music. I think an important start point is that to think the colonial abduction and the physical geographic rupture that came with slavery, that put race as a category of social control. Once you capture Black African people from the West Africa, from Central Africa, to the enslavement in America, you have the necessity of these same Black people to translate this political and cultural and social practices to America. It's not the same thing, but is an intention of translation. And in this colonial, suffering the colonial forces, suffering the colonial hostilities, these practices, these musical, cultural, socio-political practices, they transform, they are reinvented here in America, all of America, North America, Central America, Caribbean, South America. And one aspect that is really important to think this process is the porous borders between art and religion that opens the interpretation to a broader spirituality or intimate relationship between body and spirituality. And it paints a scene of clash of ontological conflicts into the notion of corporeality, as Moniz Sodré says. For one hand, we have the modern subject that praises the spirit over body, the modern project, European Illuminist project of body, of man, of mankind, and on the other hand, a body that houses representations of the cosmos and all cosmological principles, therefore the deities. These clash, these conflicts bring a threefold negation. Mbembe calls a threefold negation of the enslaved condition. First, the Black people on slavery, they lose the autonomy of the body. And second point, the home. And third point, the political status that ensures the citizenship. And I might add the denial of the possibility for Black people to express sensibility through art. And then here I'm using a statement by Anne Lafont. And personally, I add the denial or the corruption of the notion of time that keeps Black people from reaching and thinking a self-understanding of as a political and artistic subject. They do art, and most of the time they know they are doing art, but they know too that this art, this ability is not necessarily considered from an ethnocentric point of view and political economic point of view of how we make life, and to experiment, to see and to comprehend the things disposable in the world, the things that are in the world, actually. It is needed time, and time puts itself as a scarce resource. And then we have this orthography of Wake. I think these are 2 points that are important. The orthography of Wake from Christina Sharp that says that lines this mutable present of the yet to resolve unfoldings of enslavement. Black people live in this yet to resolve unfoldings of enslavement, and always has been since slavery, and from the end of the slavery to nowadays. this Black life is occupied by these thoughts, these fragilities, this vulnerability of these wakes. And Mbembe, in his most recent work, he tells us that we have irreparable and unconquerable loss, and that this is the starting point for us to elaborate what we will do from an African point of view, from a Caribbean point of view, to a Latin American point of view. This must be the centers of how we will build another ways of life. And I like to friction these two words, mobility and movement. Mobility thinking on a an institutional perspective, the power over displacement and movement. And mobility is guided by these ethnocentric ideals of modernity, of progress, of order, of the aesthetics. And when you think this by the ethnocentric perspective, we will elect some parameters, some characteristics, some aspects that are most important and most valid, most legit than others. And I think when we go back and see those laws throughout all America, we can understand better, and not only these laws located, time located in the past, but how they are updating themselves through time. These acts were ended not by a law, but by the end of slavery. So this is a picture that I think that puts a vision perspective on what I think it is mobility. Movement, on the other hand, it's a subjective dimension. It tells wishes, desires, intentions, individual parameters that generally are connected to a social territory identity, and a social territory identity that is built on shared experience and recognized codes that are in word for interpret this word. And I think these images also can makes us understand, enables us to understand what I think movement is freer, may I say. It's dance, it's leisure, pleasure, and playing instruments, dancing, moving, and it's all interconnected all around America. Then I get to Ginga. That is my center concept here, the politics of Ginga, or the poetics of Ginga. Thinking Ginga is a very Brazilian word that we use in escolas de samba, we use in rodas de capoeira, the movement of the hips, the movement of the arms and legs, the movement that we do on daily basis, moving into street. It's a process, it's an instrument, it's a tool of humanization, of becoming human in the Afro-diasporic experience. And it is fed by a performance as thought, and it engages the body, the Black bodies in the world, in these interactions in the world, through every dimension of the world. It's a psychic thinking, it's a body engagement that we do in political dimension, in economic dimension, job dimension, flirting dimension. It's a tool, it's a cosmetechnical tool. is Júlio César Tavares, an anthropologist, Brazilian anthropologist, say that Ginga is a repertoire of speeches and gestures created by subaltern groups, usually Black groups, that works in the construction and shaping of cognitive patterns that become a schema for a given society. It's a repertoire of gestures, it's a repertoire of ways of how to act, that thinks how to act, how to dress yourself, how to pull yourself through the world. It's an important element of the subjective thoughts, subjective identities. It's an ethical and aesthetic tool for action in a world that is hostile with you. And other author, Roberto Nascimento, and I like the spiritual aspect that he says about Ginga. He says the movement that lets the body travel between worlds, the visible and invisible, are made through these three aspects of the body: the physical body, the social body, and the spiritual body that considers the cosmological dimension. And these three-dimensionality of Ginga is what prevents the dismantling of the notion of Black corporality. And to end my presentation, I think that these three categories they are not the only ones, but I think for now they show us, they present us how we can think Ginga through music, how we can see Ginga through music. First, the aspect of affective cartography of the body in movement that invokes order principle, the circularity. You must be in space and get around this space, to know this space and to be in this space, to recognize and better understand the experience that you are having, and how we can learn Ginga, to Gingar in the world. It's what links the body, your body, our body, to the territory, and it has the in dance a very territorial power, a very territorial aspect that links helps you to link with your group, with your community. Second aspect is the improvisation, the body in improvised movement, techniques that not praises in the first place, the precision in the first place, but considers the precision as part of the movement, part of the aesthetic. The syncopation as a response to vigilance, making us a remix of ourselves and of our ancestralities. And I think improvisation not as something specifically new, but as something, as a resource, something that you access and mobilize from the past now. It's something that you know you have to do to better live in general. And at last, the body in experimental movement that reclaims the time to experiment. The time, as I said earlier, is a scarce resource. When you have a Black body that is experimenting the movement, to play, to sing, to think, it is reclaiming time. Reclaiming a creative force, an imaginational force, to experiment and to link with your spirituality, to your sensuality, and to create new movements of ancestrality too. And I like what Agawu says, Kofi Agawu says, he proposes a 4-step routine when you're reading his book, The African Imagination of Music, and I think that's applicable to everything we do, every interaction we have with music, with Black music. He says, you must read this music, listen this book, listening to the music that I'm proposing, that I'm presenting to you, and please speak this music, sing this music, clap this music, and dance this music. It's a body engagement with music. And for him, for Kofi Agawu, this is what can approximate us to a better, to a truer, not essential, but a truer experimentation of African music and what I might call to Afro-diasporic music. I think this is, I think I passed the time. I will thank you.
Thank you, Victor. Thank you all for the very excellent talks. And it's a very interesting form of thinking through sound, because sound is something that sometimes comes in second place. People are always talking about the images or what they see, and they don't stop to listen. So this is really good to have these wonderful presentations thinking from sound. So we are now open for questions from the public. So if you can raise your hand, or you can use the Q&As to send us a question. And just while we have about 30 minutes for this. So, but while you guys are thinking of your questions, I can make some comments here on the works. And I think one thing that connects everyone is a certain idea of politics of sound, or sound politics. So I like to discuss a little bit about this. In relation to Filippi, I was really interested in this idea of a certain biopolitics of sound in the workplace. But I think you kind of like mentioned this idea of how sound can make these workers more productive. And so how does this work? And also I was thinking about a certain historical perspective of when does this idea of silence, I mean, is there the studies that tells us this, that when does silence become this important, I don't know, management issue? Like, obviously we know that this silence is culturally determined, but when does it invade the workplace as a form of achieving productivity? And if in your research you have already seen these social differences between how sound is seen and thought on these different places and workplaces, if there's like political social differences that also appear in these definitions. Rafael, I was really intrigued by the Afro pop, like this neoliberal agro pop music that we already, I mean, we know the sertanejo industry as one of these very well succeeded cultural industry in Brazil. And I was thinking from like a country from the global south, it's really hard to have an industry. And this is something we managed to do in the music. So I was like really intrigued by this transition where these new kind of music from sertanejo subgenre working very politically in their lyrics and their representations. So like transitioning from this like more like a traditional idea of the countryside, or that what we call in Portuguese and maybe in Spanish as well, the música de corno, like broken heart themes and other romantic music, and now this contemporary neoliberal ideology as the main motor of this subgenre. And I was thinking with something we've noticed with Bolsonaro's presidency, how the cultural production became an important place, like a battlefield. Like this idea that in the dictatorship, the right wing lost the cultural battle because all of the cultural production that really mattered from the time comes from the left wing. So that now they needed to fight this battle as well. You know, like this neoliberalism, but transfigured into this political battlefield, because we can also identify neoliberalism in other subgenres, like the São Paulo's funk or trap or whatever, but it doesn't have this national discourse or this, you know, this specific space of this like economic and political space of the agribusiness in Brazil. And Victor, well, yes, very interesting in your idea of Ginga and how sound is a way of thinking about this history of diaspora, of Black diaspora in the Americas, especially. I was thinking about this idea, maybe more of like a mythical narrative, but with a lot of truth. That is this idea that from the Black enslaved who were only allowed to enter the slave ships with their bodies. They could not bring anything with them. They even had to go through the gate, the door of forgetfulness, right? So the centrality of the body in a politics of survival, in a politics of producing effective territories, it's really incredible, because it's like they were reduced to a body. And this is where the apontasy comes from as well. So I was also thinking about other theoretical frameworks, one from Ana Cláudia Cruz, anthropologist from UFI. She has this book, it's called Devir Negro. She works with the Afro groups in Bahia. It's the whole idea of how there's a certain production of a certain territory, a subjectivity, and it's how this works. The idea of Black territories by Raquel Honig as well, who work with this. It's not about just because Black people occupy a space, it becomes Black. It has a lot to do with Ginga, like there's a way of being that turns the space a Black space. So you maybe comment this idea, because I think it's when you talk about spirituality and sound and body, we are talking about a politics that is very immanent, from the immanence, not transcendence, because it's all about situating your body in a space and producing a certain intervention through this body and through this spirituality that is only lived through the body. Yeah. And I have a question already from the Q&A, so I'm gonna add this question to my questions, right? So this is from Suraja Chakraborty. I'll read out what she wrote. She says, "Thank you for your wonderful presentations." And she has a question. "Vitor, my question is for you. I work with drumming, corporality, and spirituality in South Asia. I was reading about how drumming was banned for the Black plantation workers in the Caribbean. Hence, they started using foot stomping and claps to communicate with each other, which they would earlier do through drumming. I was wondering then if drumming and dancing can both be considered bodily movements that links to spirituality, effective territories, and etc."
Who will begin? Felipe quer comentar? Felipe,
Vai be.
I don't
O
know
Roberto
how
caiu,
you...
né? Roberto caiu.
Travou.
Apparently. I'm not sure he has handed the question.
Olá.
Oi?
Oi, Laura?
Oi, vocês conseguem escutar?
Sim.
Ah, mas acho que o Robert não
Sorry, I'm
consigo.
back. I have technical
okay.
issues. I hope, Victor, you listened to the question from the public. Yeah?
Yeah.
And you can read it as well. Okay. So please, guys, answer.
Okay. Can I answer first? I apologize because I had to move to the corridor of the university because the internet was unstable. The room had to move. Okay, it's a bit messy here. But Roberto, answering to your ideas, I think it's important to think that sound as power. Sound is power. So to occupy the sound space is to have power over it. And the same can be thought to think about regarding silence. I mean, to silence any sound is to produce another sound density which can overcome the power of the sound. So there is a book that talks about the changing from pre-industrial work to industrial factory in Britain within the 18th century to the 19th century, and they talk about they eliminated the work singing, the workers sing along at work, and the factory was not allowed to sing, most factors. So this is a power management. What we are seeing that nowadays, all the work environments are fully of sounds, and some of these sounds are controlled by the managers and the owners of the place, and some others are from the noisy cities we live in, and workers try to deal with it, try to negotiate the power, the sound power, and even the silence. So it is, as I said, a floating term that refers to sometimes a very busy environments, and sometimes to a real science, something more near what we'd call real science. But the issue is to an effort to control the sound ambience while you are working. Sometimes it's possible, sometimes not possible. So they try to deal with that, workers, and as sounds power, the work environment is fulfilled of work power relations, and that crosses sounds and are all mixed in this equation. Well, I'm not sure I properly answered your question. I'm not sure if there is a proper answer for this question, because it's something that you can think about a lot, and there are always some difficulties regarding the diversity of sound environments and the sound and the work occupations. So each has a particularity, and if there's something that we can generalize for all this is the idea that sound is power, and people try to manage and to deal with this power management, and silence is one not alone idea that might be achieved and might be thought as something desirable in some moments of the work. I'm talking, listening to Vitor talking about time. This is another concept that's very important regarding sound, because sound is movement and sound is time. So it's always related to moments, and during the work people are involved with work. So it is the management of sound is not always, it's not something blocked during the time you are working. It is negotiating fragments, and this is another interesting issue to talk about, this how this time management process with sound management to more close to silence or more close to noisy ambience. So, but this is something that we are dealing with.
Rafael, we can follow the order of the panel.
Okay, Roberto. Yes, I think it's very intriguing, this recent transition that we can see inside the sertanejo style, because if we see in the last decade, since from sertanejo universitário, now university sertanejo, that had a relationship of the urban expansion in the center region of Brazil, the universities from the first and the second years of Lula, ProUni, Reúne, etc. And if we see in the mainstream, the rise of the girls like Feminejo, that talked about this. The universitarian and this feminist talked about a lot of heart pain, love pain, these things, and but the solution is it's like to go to parties, to drink, things like that. It's different between the sertanejo romântico, sertanejo caipira from the beginning. So I think the relationship that it's how do I say, it's in common with this new brand. I think Curtição it's still present to solution problems, but the focus of the lyrics different. It's more it's very, if you keep the boys of this style, they are very apologetic, and there's a relationship in my product. I make an effort to make this association with trap and funk, the kind of ostentação, as what we say, but it's different. That it's another kind of ostentação. The luxury consumption, these things, but when I think about politics, there's a branch of this work is that way then other artists like Gustavo Lima, Zé Neto, etc., manifest in the social media. They are clearly, they support Jair Bolsonaro. And Ana Castela, she doesn't answer, but if you see in the iconography, like the flag, these things, we know what kind of public she's talking with. And one, just give an example. If I make a little parallel between Ana Castela, that's a girl, and the feminejas like Marília Mendonça, etc., I presented and work in Federal de Pernambuco in this Com Música, the Com Música Congress, that I showed a little kind of video clips of Ana Castela, and there's an hybridization between sertanejo and funk, and a lot of lyrics, and reggaeton also. But when the sound is funk, we can notice a lot of commentaries in YouTube that says things like that. She proves that we can be not vulgar when we perform funk. She's a good girl to marriage, things like that. A lot of, so we can see the kind of values that are circulation between this the singers and the public also. So
Vitor?
Right. I think it's important to say that it's a common modus operandi. We are always writing and listening and reading and building our researches with a repertoire that is ours, but also the repertoire that are from other people, the people that came before us. I took the Ginga from a very important text that I read from Júlio César Tavares, and he is an anthropologist. And I kept thinking about it. I saw these words in other works, and I thought, well, I think this is something that has to be very near, very intimate with body. It is body, it's body expression, and it's body expression, but not only it mobilizes other things. That are the things, that other words, that are the 5 words that I said in my presentation. When I presented these 5 words, these principles, it was also important to say that I didn't say, it's not that one manifests alone. It's always a mix too. It's 2 of them together, 3 of them together, or all of them together. And this is very important. And in this part of the work, of this research, I'm thinking of body, but I evoked the circularity, ancestrality, and what I'm thinking about is elaborate way of thinking the Black bodies engaged in music, always engaged in music since slavery, since before slavery also, to confront this idea of the reduction to the body, the reduction of Black African people enslaved to only the body. They were carrying codes, symbols, culture, ways of doing politics, ways of thinking and realizing economics, ways of building houses and building a neighborhood, building a community. They were anti-colonial, they were decolonial before it was cool, way before it was cool. And that is an important thing. That is what you said, way of being. I did my master and my graduation writing research about street vendors in Rio de Janeiro since the colonization process, since the slavery epoch. And I had to go back to understand what markets as a place and markets as economic logic were played, were understood by African people, for the Akan people, for Yoruba people, for Bantu people, and how and I tried to understand how these codes, how these ways of understanding the market were intertwined here and translated here in Brazil, in Bahia, in Rio de Janeiro. And this is a way of being. This is the not the only one, but this is a way of being Black and reproducing, trying to reproduce, trying to translate what projects of life were and still are being built by Black community. And answering from the crowd question, if drumming and dancing can both be considered bodily movement that links to spirituality, affective territory, etc. Yes, and this is an important thing to me. Drums and stomping and dancing. The drumming were prohibited in many places through America, but people found ways of reproducing the sounds of, as you said, reproducing the sounds of drumming through their bodies, through basically through their bodies, but they found other ways, including of rebuilding drums. The drums were the instruments in general, African instruments in general were rebuilt and reinvented here in America. Banjo, the blues banjo, some say that the banjo is a reinterpretation, a translation of kora from the West African culture. So the translation, the reinvention is an important aspect of this change of paradigm of arts in America, Black art in America. And I did a class earlier this year, and a student came, she plays maracatu an important musical and corporal expression in northeastern Brazil and Pernambuco. And she moved when she was saying that when you're playing the drums in maracatu, you have to be attent to what the other people are doing, to better understand what you will do too. And when someone makes this with their arm, you have to understand that a bump, a stomp is coming off, and then you have to. They will lead, and you will follow. And so, it's a way of call and response, a non-verbal call and response, a gesture. Play instruments, drumming, dance is gestures. It's a whole body of gestures that you can and you will learn with you growing up and seeing and perceiving the world, perceiving the music spaces. And this is why I think I see the movement as a suggestion of the Black aesthetic. You move with it. The Black sounds, the Black music induces you to move. It's in the majority of times you are listening to Black music, to Black music genres. When you are in Black music spaces, dances, balls, you're induced to move. It's not something purely visually enjoyable. It's something that touches you, that vibrates on you and makes your body vibrate too, in many ways. This is why I think the movement is a suggestion. You have to communicate. Music is communication. You have to communicate. You use the drums to communicate. You use your body to communicate and to transmit something you know, even if you don't know that you're transmitting something.
Okay, thanks. We have one last question to Rafael. It comes from Ariane Brito. And her question is, since you have a background studying music and economy, how do you think precariousness manifests itself in the context of exhibition of wealth and luxury?
So in this project, so I analyze six musics that are on the top of the charts in music industry. So I think when in this in common, if I see sertanejo, trap, and funk, they talk a lot of this kind of music. Talk about of consumption, a lot of luxury, ostentation, and things like that. Even in the when I talk about funk and trap, even inside the favela scenario. So I analyzed that in my thesis about funk ostentação and the Lula's and Dilma's years, using the concept of Veronica Gago of neoliberalism from the in Portuguese, neoliberalismo de baixo para cima, from down
From
to
low, from low to top.
Yeah, from low to top. So I think I don't know how exactly to answer, Ariane, because if I think inside this statics, if just to think about the transition between rap to trap in the ancients, in the past rap music, there were more how do I say protest denouncing the not just the violence, but the precarious way to live in this kind of styles that I analyze, and I don't see that. So we can think that it can be think as a symptom of the mainstream inside these aesthetics. They are undercovered, I think. They are covered.
Well, I think we're just running out of time. So I'd like to thank everyone for their participation. And these talks are really very interesting on sound, and it's like sound opens a window for us to think about Brazil and politics, racial politics, workplace politics. Anyway, so thank you very much. And for everyone who's listening, please keep coming to the panels of the International Forum.
Valeu, gente.
Tchau, tchau.
Tchau, tchau.
Tchau, tchau. Muito obrigada a
Beijo,
vocês.
tchau.
Tchau.